If then fact and reason and the evidence of an ancient poet point to this explanation, I do not see why we should decide otherwise than as I have written above on this subject. Jupiter, whose orbit is between those of Mars and Saturn, traverses a longer course than Mars and a shorter than Saturn. Likewise with the rest of these stars, the farther they are from the outermost limits of the heaven, and the nearer their orbits to the earth, the sooner they are seen to finish their courses, for those of them that have a smaller orbit often pass those that are higher, going under them. 15. For example, place 7 ants on a wheel such as potters use, having made 7 channels on the wheel about the center, increasing successively in circumference, and suppose those ants obliged to make a circuit in these channels while the wheel is turned in the opposite direction. In spite of having to move in a direction contrary to that of the wheel, the ants must necessarily complete their journeys in the opposite direction, and that ant which is nearest the center must finish its circuit sooner, while the ant that is going round at the outer edge of the disc of the wheel must, on account of the size of its circuit, be much slower in completing its course, even though it is moving just as quickly as the other. In the same way, these stars which struggle on against the course of the firmament are accomplishing an orbit on paths of their own, but, owing to the revolution of the heaven, they are swept back as it goes round every day. 16. The reason why some of these stars are temperate, others hot, and others cold, appears to be this: that the flame of every kind of fire rises to higher places. Consequently, the burning rays of the sun make the ether above him white hot in the regions of the course of Mars, and so the heat of the sun makes him hot. Saturn, on the contrary, being nearest to the outermost limit of the firmament and bordering on the quarters of the heaven which are frozen, is excessively cold. Hence, Jupiter, whose course is between the orbits of these two, appears to have a moderate and very temperate influence, intermediate between their cold and heat. I have now described, as I have received them from my teacher, the belt of the 12 signs and the 7 stars that work and move in the opposite direction, with the laws and numerical relations under which they pass from sign to sign, and how they complete their orbits. I shall next speak of the waxing and waning of the moon, according to the accounts of my predecessors. Chapter 2. The phases of the moon. 1. According to the teaching of Berosus, who came from the state, or rather nation, of the Chaldees, and was the pioneer of Chaldean learning in Asia, the moon is a ball, one half luminous and the rest of a blue color. When, in the course of her orbit, she has passed below the disk of the sun, she is attracted by his rays in great heat, and turns thither her luminous side, on account of the sympathy between light and light. Being thus summoned by the sun's disk and facing upward, her lower half, as it is not luminous, is invisible on account of the likeness to the air. When she is perpendicular to the sun's rays, all her light is confined to her upper surface, and she is then called the new moon. 2. As she moves on, passing by to the east, the effect of the sun upon her relaxes, and the outer edge of the luminous side sheds its light upon the earth in an exceedingly thin line. This is called the second day of the moon. Day by day she is further relieved and turns, and thus are numbered the 3rd, 4th, and following days. On the 7th day, the sun being in the west and the moon in the middle of the firmament between the east and west, she is half the extent of the firmament distant from the sun, and therefore half of the luminous side is turned toward the earth. But when the sun and moon are separate by the entire extent of the firmament, and the moon is in the east with the sun over against her in the west, she is completely relieved by her still greater distance from his rays, and so on the 14th day she is at the full, and her entire disk emits its light. On the succeeding days, up to the end of the month, she wanes daily as she turns in her course, being recalled by the sun until she comes under his disk and rays, thus completing the count of the days of the month. 3. But Aristarchus of Samos, a mathematician of great powers, has left a different explanation in his teaching on this subject, as I shall now set forth. It is no secret that the moon has no light of her own, but is, as it were, a mirror, receiving brightness from the influence of the sun. Of all the seven stars, the moon traverses the shortest orbit, and her course is nearest to the earth. Hence in every month, on the day before she gets past the sun, she is under the disk and rays, and is consequently hidden and invisible. When she is thus in conjunction with the sun, she is called the new moon. On the next day, reckoned as her second, she gets past the sun and shows the thin edge of her sphere. 3 days away from the sun she waxes and grows brighter, removing further every day till she reaches the seventh, when her distance from the sun at his setting is about 1/2 the extent of the firmament. 1/2 of her is luminous, that is, the half which faces toward the sun is lighted up by him. 4. On the 14th day, being diametrically across the whole extent of the firmament from the sun, she is at her full, and rises when the sun is setting. For, as she takes her place over against him and distant to the whole extent of the firmament, she thus receives the light from the sun throughout her entire orb. On the 17th day, at sunrise, she is inclining to the west. On the 22nd day, after sunrise, the moon is about mid-heaven. Hence, the side exposed to the sun is bright and the rest dark. Continuing thus her daily course, she passes under the rays of the sun on about the 28th day, and so completes the account of the month. I will next explain how the sun, passing through a different sign each month, causes the days and hours to increase and diminish in length. End of Book 9, Chapter 2.